of a Gunner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gunner. Harry Symeou time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gunner.
Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Gunner pod with me, your host, Harry Symeou. We're almost there. It's almost time for the return of the Premier League. We're not a million miles away from it now. Mikel Arteta will be speaking to the press on Friday morning ahead of Arsenal's trip to Craven Cottage, where they'll take on Fulham, a team that in the last couple of seasons have managed to take some points off us down at the Cottage, down by the river. So yeah, it's an interesting game that we've got coming up. But I always find these games really kind of difficult to predict, and I find picking the lineup quite difficult, especially when you're coming off the back of an international break. That is kind of the main factor here, right? Because you've got players who have traveled all over the world. You don't know 100% in what condition they're going to return. Some have gone and played lots of minutes. Others have gone and played less minutes. Someone might have picked up a bump or a bruise, and you just don't really know, do you? So I can imagine that as a Premier League manager, you're probably incredibly nervous up until you get all your players back in through the door. You can have a look at all of them. You can figure out who's good, who's not. Who's had a good international break, who's had a not so good international break. Because remember as well, we talked about it in the past. Mikel Arteta does place quite a bit of value and emphasis on how you perform during the international break. I mean, we saw Mikel Merino in the last one perform outrageously well for Spain. And when he returned, he was in the team. And given that he scored another brace the other day, and we did a sort of special pod on Mikel Merino yesterday because of his really, really impressive international performances, I wouldn't be shocked. It's not what I would do, but I wouldn't be shocked if Mikel Merino was in the starting lineup at Fulham. So there's lots to factor in here. There's lots and lots to consider. We're going to talk a little bit about the fixture. I'm going to share with you guys my predicted lineup. I'll tell you a little bit about how Fulham have gotten on so far this season. And then we'll, of course, bring you some reaction from the press conference tomorrow. I'll be at the Sober Realty Training Centre. So, hoping to get a question or two in for the boss. Haven't thought about what I'm going to ask yet, but we'll get a couple of questions in and obviously we'll report back on what was said and sort of highlight the key takeaways from the press conference. So we'll do that as soon as I return from the training ground tomorrow. So tomorrow's pod might be slightly later than the normal time of 10 a.m. Now, we are a little bit all over the place in terms of our routine at the moment. We're still trying to get pods out for 10 to 11 a.m.-ish, but we're not live today again. And the reason we're not live is because I've taken the opportunity during this international break to get a lot of stuff done at home that I really, really need to do. We moved house, as I've mentioned to you guys before, just before Christmas. It's nearly a year now, but there's a lot of things that we never got around to doing or finishing, and I needed to get them done. So what I figured was I'd get up in the mornings early, record the podcast while my kids are at school. And that gives me an even bigger window between the day kind of starting and them coming home to get done all the things that I need to do. And I can tell you this, for anyone who's ever done a bit of DIY or has had to go out shopping for household things, let me tell you this, I would much rather be working. Much rather be working. Anyway, let's have a look into this fixture a little bit then, of course. So Arsenal travelling to Craven Cottage on Saturday evening. I never like 5:30 kickoffs. Why? Because I feel like it's a bit of a jinx of a kickoff time. And maybe I'm going back to certain days in the past where we were terrible at that kickoff time, where we used to go to like Bolton or Blackburn or something like that and end up getting basically bullied off the park. Those days are long gone, but I still don't like the 5:30 kickoff time. I just don't. If you look at our seasons so far, obviously, Arsenal sitting top of the pile with 16 points, double the amount of points that Fulham have picked up so far. Fulham have got just 8 points on the board, but perhaps more alarmingly than that, they've only scored 8 goals. They've only scored 8 goals, and their league position currently is 14th. Now, I had a look this morning into the transfer business that they did over the course of the summer. And the reason I did that was because I distinctly remember going and covering a game on the opening weekend of the EFL season. So that would have been the week before the Premier League kicked off. I was covering, I think it was Watford versus QPR at Vicarage Road for BBC Radio London. And I remember sort of finishing the game, conducting my interviews with the managers, sending them back into the studio. And then what I normally do is I pop on BBC Radio London on my drive home so that I can hear those interviews, see how they went down, see what was kind of discussed off the back of them anyway. And I put the radio on, and on that day, I think Fulham were playing a friendly. And I remember the narrative and the story around Fulham being very much, they haven't done enough business. And Marco Silva had made that point. Now, it's not the first time that Marco Silva's been vocal about the club maybe not doing enough to kind of match essentially what they say their ambitions are. So I wasn't overly surprised to hear that. But then I thought he had that little moan just before the season started. Then obviously you've got a good 2-3 weeks between this point that I'm talking about. So a week before the Premier League started and then the end of the transfer window. And I thought, did they do enough then? What did they do? And I had a look into it, and I've got to be honest, it's all a little bit underwhelming. They managed to sign Kevin from Shakhtar Donetsk, who is a wide player, and they paid a good amount for him, 40 million euros. Other than that, they got Jonah Kusi Asare, 18-year-old, on loan from Bayern Munich. They got Benjamin Lecomte, who's a goalkeeper that they brought in from Montpellier at £500,000, 34-year-old goalkeeper. Samuel Chukwueze, interest in signing that, on loan from AC Milan, 26 years old. And Luke Harris, who was on loan at Birmingham, has returned from his loan spell. So you look at that and it's underwhelming, man. It is underwhelming. So I'm not actually surprised. I'm not saying it's all about transfer business and that's the only thing that you should kind of judge a team's credentials on. You know, there's obviously a team already there. Marco Silva's done a good job for a number of years now at Fulham. But you looked at that and you thought to yourself, you know, have they really shown any ambition with that window? And I know that the summer before they went quite big, right? But some of those signings haven't really worked out. And also on top of that, they lost Andreas Pereira, who I don't think was a top player, but I think was capable on his day of impacting a game, of digging you out of a hole, of producing a free kick or scoring a decent goal. You know, he's got that ability. He's got that something about him, Andreas Pereira. But maybe I guess the argument and the counterpoint to that would be that you didn't see it and you didn't get it often enough from him, in which case, you know, fair play. But they let him go for about 10 million euros to Palmeiras in Brazil. And the only real, as I say, major significant signing that they've made is that of Kevin. Felt to me like Fulham needed more. And as I say, maybe they're paying for the fact that they went quite big this summer before. Obviously, Emile Smith Rowe was one of the players that they brought in. And I had a couple of questions on the Patreon chat this morning about Emile Smith Rowe. You know, what's gone wrong and what's the issue there? Why is he not a regular starter, for example? Because, you know, when he first went there, he was scoring goals galore and really, really impacting games. And since then, it's not that he hasn't played, but he's certainly not been a nailed-on starter week in, week out. And I can only go by sort of what I hear. But just from covering a few of their games over the last kind of year or so, I was told by, you know, some people that are working within Fulham Football Club that the question mark that Marco Silva, or the two question marks that Marco Silva has next to Emile Smith Rowe's name are, A, is he fit enough and robust enough to play every single game from the start and to play 90 minutes? And based on what he's seen, I don't think he believes that that's true. And the second thing is, does he give enough to Fulham off the ball? Now, I'm not saying that Emile Smith Rowe's a bad player, right? Because I really liked him when he broke through at Arsenal. And I would go as far as saying that at that point in time, and I was obviously wrong, but at that point in time, I thought he was as, if not more talented than Bukayo Saka. Genuinely. You know, obviously Bukayo Saka physically is better and, you know, was sort of defying what, you know, an 18-year-old should be like sort of physically and stepping into the first team and having no issues and no problems with it. Whereas Emile Smith Rowe was very stop-start, you know, this injury, this knock, that knock. And it saw him struggle to build momentum really over any kind of sustained period of time. He did have a good spell on our left side, coming in off that left flank and contributing goals and assists and all the rest of it. But once the injury started again, he never really was able to kind of build any momentum and propel himself up to the level that we hoped he would. So talent-wise, I never really doubted him, but physically I doubted him. And now I'm looking at him today and I'm thinking, well, you know, you're a great player in terms of what you're capable of, but are you a great modern day player? And I know people will say that's crazy and it's been a snob and all the rest of it because, you know, for me, the number 10 position is something that is kind of very nostalgic to me, something that I look back on with great fondness in terms of the way that type of player used to kind of swan around in between a midfield and a defense and just cause absolute carnage, chaos, havoc. You look at that and you do feel that Emile Smith Rowe could do that if fit, if sharp. But when is he fully fit? When is he always, 100% sharp? And even when he's fit, is he really fit? Is the kind of other question. But on top of that, off the ball, he doesn't seem to give you enough. And a manager like Mikel Arteta and a manager like Marco Silva, make no mistakes about that, make no bones about that, will demand that he brings a certain level of contribution out of possession. And I don't think with Emile Smith Rowe, you get that. And that's why I would argue that he's gone from going to Fulham and being, the kind of main man, if you like, the big summer signing, to someone that, does play. I'm not saying he doesn't play, but at 25 years old, given the potential that he showed when he first broke through, I want to see Emile Smith Rowe playing all the time. And I want to see him being the main man and being a star for a certain club. I'm saying all this. He's probably going to come and score against us at the weekend. But I'm just looking at it now, right? He's got 1 goal this season in 7 Premier League appearances. And I'm not really judging him on the goals, to be honest. He's got 1 goal in 2 appearances in the EFL Cup. But the alarming thing is that if you look at his Premier League statistics so far, he's only played 20% of Fulham's total minutes. So clearly, he's become a bit of a sort of a bit part player there. I mean, look at it from the first weekend of the season, right? Match day 1, they went away to Brighton. He played 13 minutes. He played 19 minutes against United, 23 against Chelsea, 30 against Leeds, 10 against Brentford, 25 against Villa, and 4 against Bournemouth. So he's not a regular starter at Fulham anymore. And that's a shame for him because he's certainly got the talent. But it's, in my opinion, and it is just my opinion, down to 2 things. As I've said, I don't think he can be trusted to be at tip-top condition all of the time. And number 2, I don't think he gives you enough off the ball. And for a coach like Marco Silva, I think that's really, really important. If we look at the form guide, obviously Arsenal have been in very good form of late after that draw against Manchester City where Gabriel Martinelli dug us out of a bit of a hole. We went and won at Port Vale in the Cup. We then went and won at Newcastle in the Premier League before defeating Olympiacos by 2-0 in the Champions League and then essentially mirroring that score at home against West Ham just a few days later. Fulham were in pretty decent form. They'd won 2 Premier League games at home to Leeds and at home to Brentford before getting past Cambridge United in the Cup. But then they went to Villa and Bournemouth and lost both of those games 3-1. So when I say that Fulham have been a little bit underwhelming, it's not been a disaster, but I expect a little bit more from a team that's been together that long and for a team that's managed by Marco Silva, who I really rate, by the way, as a coach. In terms of the previous meetings, well, Arsenal are very, very dominant in terms of the overall record between these 2 sides. Arsenal have won 39 of the 60 meetings. There have been 8 Fulham victories and 13 draws. But we've only won 1 of the last 3 games between the 2 sides in the Premier League. And that was a 2-1 win in April at Emirates Stadium. If you go back to our last 2 trips to Craven Cottage, we haven't won any of them. Last season, we got that draw. You'll remember. And the season before, we lost after taking the lead. And that one was on New Year's Eve, I want to say. Yep, 31st of December, 2023. There you go. So, yeah, it's not been a happy hunting ground for Arsenal of late. Are we the better team? Yes. But the point I'm trying to make is not that I don't expect Arsenal to go to Fulham and win. It's that you can look at our run of fixtures now and you can say this is a very winnable run of games. And on paper, I'd agree with you. But football isn't played on paper, especially in the Premier League. So you've always got to be wary and you've always got to be mindful of that, I think. If we look at some of the facts that the BBC have put up, some of these are really, really interesting. Arsenal have had 14 counter-attacking phases of play in the Premier League this season. That's the most of any side. Last season, the Gunners ranked 17th for this, with just 47 in the whole campaign. So clearly, there's an emphasis on getting the ball forward earlier. And we've talked about that quite a bit, haven't we, off the back of matches this season. So that backs up essentially what we think we're seeing. No side has had more different goal scorers in the Premier League this season than Arsenal. 9, level with Brighton. Only twice before have the Gunners had 10 different players score within their opening 8 matches of a Premier League season. That was in 2009, 2010, and 2018, 2019. Let's move on. What else have we got on here? Hold on. What have I done here? Okay, here we go. Fulham have won only one of their last 14 Premier League games against Arsenal. A 2-1 victory in December 2023, that game that I just referenced. And indeed, the Cottagers have conceded at least once in each of their last 20 games against the Gunners in all competitions. So, yeah, we score against them, which is good. After winning 5 successive league visits to Fulham from 2012-13 to 22-23, Arsenal have since failed to win at Craven Cottage in both of the last 2 campaigns. Arsenal have only lost one of their last 18 London derbies in the Premier League, and that was a 1-0 home defeat to West Ham in February last season. So we're pretty good in those London derbies. Fulham have won their last 2 home games in the Premier League, which is obviously very, very good. So, yeah, a couple of other player-related stats that I'll throw your way before we come on to talk about the team. Fulham's Alex Iwobi, formerly of Al Parish, of course, has made 8 line-breaking passes into the opposition's penalty area in the Premier League this season. Only Bruno Fernandes has made more. Iwobi's also created 4 chances via line-breaking passes in the division this term, with Fernandes, again, the only player to do so more, with 5. So Alex Iwobi's developed, man. And do you know what? I always liked Alex Iwobi when he was at Arsenal. I always felt like up until the point where he had to take the shot, he was brilliant, but he never really used to get a hold of his shots. The amount of P-rollers he'd kind of send towards the goalkeeper right in the center of the goal that he just essentially kneel down and collect. That used to frustrate me. His finishing wasn't good enough, but I'd say even that has improved over the years. But his all-round game, I think, is really good. And I think he's really benefited from A, moving to a club like Fulham, and B, from working with a coach like Marco Silva. Always good to see Alex Iwobi. Let's just hope that he doesn't have an impact against us. And Declan Rice has scored or assisted in both of Arsenal's last 2 Premier League games. The midfielder has only had a hand in a goal in 3 successive appearances in the competition twice before. He did it in February, March 2024 and April, May 2024. He's got 6 goal involvements in his last 7 away London derbies in the Premier League. Scored against West Ham last time. Last season, he scored against Chelsea, you'll remember. So, yeah, Declan Rice, he does love a London derby, doesn't he? So, yeah, let's hope that he can deliver again come the weekend. That would be really, really important. Look, we'll talk about score predictions in just a minute. But before we do that, I want to share with you guys the team that I would pick to face Fulham at the weekend. Now, bear in mind that when I'm giving you my team, I'm giving you a team before I've heard from Mikel Arteta, before I know of any potential injury or fitness updates. So we will, of course, maybe revise that if we have to when we react to the press conference on Friday's episode. But for now, just in my head, this is kind of what I'm going with. And I think there's 2 positions that are essentially up for grabs, really. I think those 2 positions are in that 10 role, if you like, because I like to see us play with a double pivot of Zubimendi and Rice in midfield, particularly when we're away from home. And that means that, depending on what you do there, it kind of shapes what you're going to do on that left-hand side as well. That's kind of the way I see it right now. So in terms of the defense, I think as long as these guys are all fit and available, it picks itself. Raya in goal, Timber at right back, Saliba, Gabriel, and Calafiori across the rest of the back line. I'd go with Rice and Zubimendi as that double midfield pivot. I'd go with Saka on the right, and I'd go with Victor Gyökeres through the middle. We talked a lot about some of the decisions that Mikel Arteta has to make now over the coming weeks with regards to how we deal with Odegaard's absence. Is it as simple as saying, Eza, you're in, and you're the guy, and that's your position, and that's your role, and it's yours to make your own now for the next few weeks, and to really kind of go and stake your claim as Arsenal's main, if you like, attacking midfield player? I think there's a really good chance that that's the route that he goes down. But also, Ethan Nwaneri's in the equation and in the conversation, and I think deserves to be considered and should not be overlooked just because we went out in the summer and brought in this shiny new toy, because there's a world in which Eze could play on the left and Nwaneri could play through the middle, or one of them plays through the middle and either Trossard or Martinelli plays on that left-hand side. We've talked a lot over the international break about horses for courses, and that Mikel needs to make the right decisions for the right games. And that is the challenge for him this season. It's a very new challenge. It's something different. It isn't a case of, this is my best 11 and I need to get these players out on that pitch every single time it's possible, and I'll only make changes when I'm forced to. No, we've got to be more flexible. We've got to keep people happy. We've got to give people minutes. We've got to keep people feeling involved and engaged and plugged in. And I think that's really important with a player like Ethan Nwaneri. I wouldn't start him personally in this game, but I want him to have a role. I want him to feel like he's got a place and a purpose, because if he doesn't, then how engaged and switched on is he going to be when the time comes? And it will come, because we're Arsenal and we get injuries left, right, and centre, where we're going to have to call on him. So, you know, with Nwaneri now, with Madueke out as well at the minute, there is obviously that potential of him sharing some of the minutes on the right with Saka as well, a position that he's played in the past. I know the idea at Arsenal over the summer was not necessarily for him to continue as a winger and to move him into those more central areas, but where that competition is at this moment in time a little bit more rife, perhaps actually giving him some minutes on the right-hand side wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But for me, for this game, I'm playing Eze at the 10. I've really been impressed when he's played in that role. I keep banging on about it, but his performance at Newcastle and what he brought to the table that day for me was elite. He was really unlucky, desperately unlucky not to have scored a goal. But just that kind of shoot on sight attitude, that proactive forward thinking all the time, the unpredictability that he brings in and around the penalty area, that for me was massive. So he would play as the 10 for me. And on the left, I'd imagine there'd be a lot of people out there calling for Gabriel Martinelli to play, because he's been in a rich vein of form, scored again during the international break for Brazil. But you know what? I'm going with Leandro Trossard. I think that against the Marco Silva side, where we will face a low block, where we will face a team that are going to try and frustrate us for large periods of this game, actually, Leandro Trossard might be the one that we need to unpick the lock. Got a great shot on him, brilliant ability to finish. I don't think there's going to be much space to go in behind the fullback, in which case that kind of nullifies Martinelli a little bit. Martinelli feels like the type of player I'd bring on at a certain stage in the game, depending on how it pans out. But I think I'd go Trossard left for his guile, for his creativity, for his goal-scoring ability, for his ability to dig out those crosses from the corner of the box and pick people out. I've been calling him Leandro Crossard lately, because some of those deliveries have been second to none. But yeah, I think that's the way I would go. He had a good international break again, scored again for Belgium. I know Martinelli did too, but I think that's the 11 I would start with. And remember, a starting 11 nowadays, guys, it isn't the be all and end all, is it? We've seen players come on in impact games. You can essentially change half of your outfield team with the sort of ability to make 5 changes. So I'm not too obsessed this season by starting 11s. I think you obviously want to pick the starting 11 that you think gives you the best chance of getting essentially a leg up and putting you in a position where you can go on and win the game. But obviously having that capability to change it, that flexibility to change it, having Nwaneri, Martinelli, and the likes on the substitutes bench, Mikel Merino, who can't stop scoring goals when he pulls on a Spain shirt. There are options there. Even Max Dowman might make the squad. Who knows? There's options there for us. There really, really is. But that's the 11 I would start with. So just to repeat that for those of you listening on audio only, Raya in goal. Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, and Calafiori across the back. Rice and Zubimendi as my midfield pair with Eze. Just allowed that extra bit of license and freedom ahead of the two of them. Saka on the right, Trossard on the left, and Victor Gyökeres through the middle. That's what I am going with. And I'm going to give you my score prediction. Now, not to gloat or anything, but my last two predictions have been 100% spot on. Not just in terms of the outcome, not just I predicted Arsenal win-win. No, I predicted the exact scoreline. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to predict that exact same scoreline again. 2-0 to the Arsenal is what I'm going for on this one. I think Arsenal go to Fulham. I think we win. I don't think it's going to be as easy as some people are anticipating. I am wary of this run of games that we have coming up, not because I don't trust Arsenal, not because I don't think we're in a good place or we don't have more tools now to deal with the types of challenges that we're going to face, but simply because I am so bloody nervous about every single game because I so desperately want Arsenal to be crowned Premier League champions. And it would be a bit of a punch in the gut if, having clawed back the deficit on Liverpool and having leapfrogged them, if they go and pump Man United at the weekend, which could really easily happen, by the way, at Anfield, and we drop points at Fulham and end up surrendering that lead as soon as we come back from the international break. So I'm nervous because of how much I want it. I'm also wary because it's the Premier League, and that's the very nature of this beast and of this competition. It's why it's so hard to win. We've already talked about it. We haven't won in any of our last 2 visits to Craven Cottage in the league. I'm covering the game, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to getting back to work. I think I've got 4 games in 6 days next week that I'm working on, which it's going to be tiring, but obviously I'm very, very grateful. And also, as I mentioned earlier, when you've been painting kitchens and spending your hard-earned money on kitchen extractor fans and splashback panels for the walls and God knows what else I've bought. I've spent money on light fittings. I mean, how expensive are light fittings now for your living room? I mean, anyway, won't get into it. But anyway, just grateful to be back doing my thing. So, yeah, we'll be back, of course, tomorrow with some reaction to Mikel Arteta's press conference. So we'll be with you slightly later in the day just so that I can take that press conference in and then produce the podcast after that. Really, really appreciate you all sticking with me during the international break. I know sometimes it's a tough watch. I know sometimes it gets a little bit repetitive. Tried to think a little bit outside of the box this time. But yeah, thank you so much for all your love and support. A quick reminder, if you haven't done so already and you're with us on YouTube, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. All of that stuff really, really does help. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review, as that really helps. And if you want to go one further, by clicking the QR code at the top of the screen, you can sign up and become a patron for just £3 a month, which is less than a cup of coffee in London. Yes, it is, believe it or not. You will get access to every single episode completely ad-free. You'll get access to our bonus content, which is centered around the matches, and you'll be a part of our community because you'll be able to contact me and all the other patrons in the chat feature that we're currently using to stay in touch with one another. You can throw podcast ideas in there. You can throw questions in there that will be prioritized, of course, given you're a patron. And obviously, it helps me as a freelance broadcaster, as I always say, to spend more time on my beloved podcast and not have to worry so much about, prioritizing the paid gigs, essentially. Anyway, thank you all so much. Love you all, and I'll see you all on Friday's episode. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day. Up the Arsenal. Goodbye.
Chronicles of a Gunner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gunner. Harry Symeou time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gunner.